Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, the Philippines has granted citizenship to Andre Blatch. Do you have any message for the Philippines?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. He's all yours.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be, taking up full-time residence in the Philippines, although there's some coaches, particularly fired ones from the Washington Wizards, who wished he had 5 years ago.
Can wear balls on the back of his Philippines jersey when he plays in the Olympics, like he did with the Wizards. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Donald Sterling vows to fight, Henrik Lundqvist gets the hook, and 50 Cent goes a truly awful first pitch. But we begin today with the Oklahoma City Thunder stitching a clown suit on the San Antonio Spurs last night, beating them to spots, blocking their shots, stealing the ball off the dribble. Total domination, Holmes. Wilbon, 2 years ago, the Thunder spotted the Spurs a 2-game lead and then swept them out. You tell me why this is any different.
I'm not, Tony. I told you yesterday I thought the winner of last night's game was going to win the series, and nothing we saw last night suggests otherwise. The San Antonio Spurs have problems physically dealing with Oklahoma City, and I don't know what you can do. Greg Popovich is a truly great coach. But, Tony, if you are physically overmatched, and that's what it looks like for long stretches in these last 2 games, maybe Russell Westbrook gets tired. I don't want to count on that. Maybe Serge Ibaka goes back to having problems with his calf. I don't want to count on that. Unless you tell me that there's something physical that is going to deter Oklahoma City, why would I think it's going to change now?
Yeah, people are going to say that San Antonio looked old. I didn't think they looked old as much as they looked slow. I mean, they could not get shots off. Everybody who got the ball, with the exception of Tony Parker, it appeared that there were 2 people around them. And their will to win was taken from them by how physical Oklahoma City was. I mean, I know you talk about Russell Westbrook's judgment. Man, oh, man, he had 40 points. He had 10 assists and 5 steals in a playoff game. I mean, that's Michael Jordan territory. That was spectacular. He scored more points than the starters did combined, for the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know how San Antonio gets to go home. I don't know how they win a game. I don't.
Well, Tony, what's interesting is hearing Ginobili talk about what you said, how slow they were, how they were just behind him. He said we need to play close to a perfect game. Now, San Antonio, of anybody in the NBA, along with Miami, of course, is capable of putting together close to a perfect game.
Yeah.
They will be home. They have the lessons of 3 seasons ago in that postseason when they lost, 4 games after going up 2. But I'll just say this. Serge Ibaka, with him in the lineup, Oklahoma City has beaten San Antonio 7 straight times. With Serge Ibaka in the lineup, they've beaten San Antonio 6 straight playoff games.
Yeah.
San Antonio, Tony, has got to go into the laboratory and figure out something in short time. Can they do it? Yes, they could.
Shock? What are you going to figure out?
Maybe.
I mean,
and Russell Westbrook was wondrous.
Let me just ask you a question. This is 2-2 right now.
Yeah.
Do you honestly see San Antonio winning 2 of the next 3? Yes or no?
Not right now. But this series has already had a big swing, Tom. Maybe it'll have another one. Maybe it'll have another.
Maybe, but I hope they take an injection of speed. Not that speed. The run speed. The run speed.
Yeah. Let's move to our daily Donald Sterling update, Tony. Today's installment centers on a response Sterling sent to the NBA calling for the dismissal of termination proceedings against him. Sterling and his lawyers, well, some of them, made it clear he is not interested in selling the team, even though he has received offers as high as, get this, $2.5 billion. Tony, do you think this is simply posturing, or is Donald Sterling serious about holding on to his team at this point?
The honest answer is I don't know. I don't know what goes on in the mind of a man in his 80s who has seen this sort of humiliation, who's been barred. I mean, even if he doesn't want to sell the team, there's no way he's ever going to get back in the building. I mean, that's not going to happen. So I don't think he can win ultimately. I don't. I think Adam Silver and all the other owners understand that if Donald Sterling wins ultimately and they cooperate with it, their labor force is going to walk out. And so I think the end game may take a little bit longer, but I think there's an end game and he does not win. And the most important thing to me that I don't understand is the relationship in terms of him and his wife, how much they own and who can or cannot sell the team.
Well, Tony, if we're going to talk about Donald Sterling and lawyers, he has so many lawyers.
Yeah.
And I just this afternoon talked to several people close to this whole proceeding. And Donald Sterling has so many lawyers. He has lawyers, at least one, a personal lawyer, that he apparently has authorized to proceed with checking out the sale of the team.
Right.
While another lawyer, a famous antitrust lawyer who we referred to in the lead of this story, he is authorized to fight to the death. And so you got separate lawyers working separately to sort of opposite ends. Who in the world knows what Donald Sterling is and what's posturing here?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is negotiation. I suspect that down the road, if he can sell the team for what he wants to whom he wants, maybe he will sell the team. There are a couple of things that confuse me here. I mean, I know the league is going to say that his comments were so terrible that they hurt the league and the team financially. But if you tell me there are bids for $2.5 million, and the team most recently sold $2.5 billion, the team most recently sold highest ever $550 million, then he didn't hurt any value of anything at any time. I think that's way high. I think it's a way high number. But does the league get to sell it? Who gets to sell the team?
Who gets to sell it and to whom? There's so much here, Tony, we don't know. But the amazing thing is there are people right now who believe this could happen in terms of the sale, or at least the identification of it.
You understand that the Cowboys are valued at $2.3 billion. So don't tell me the Clippers are worth more than the Dallas Cowboys. It can't be. Former NFL offensive lineman Ross Tucker, who played for 5 different teams from 2001 to 2005, writes in the Sporting News that nobody twisted his arm to take painkillers. He says he eagerly took them and accepts the consequences. Furthermore, he thinks most of his fellows did the same. Quote, these players wanted the medication because they wanted to play. They did not ask about any potential long-term side effects because they didn't care, unquote. Wilbon, does this shift your perception about the painkiller lawsuit brought by former players against the NFL?
Not 1 inch. Everything he said in that piece, Tony, which I read, you can say that about head injuries. You can say, well, players wanted to go back in even though they might have been told they had head injuries. Players wanted to go back in even though they knew they had a dinger or their bell was wrong, or any of those euphemisms for concussion. All of the same things apply. If you substitute concussion or head injury for neck, back, knee, whatever, with painkiller, no, it doesn't change anything. Players want to go back in no matter what. But we hold the league accountable, and the league has sort of said, okay, we're okay with this when it comes to head injuries. You hold them accountable for head injuries, but not these other things? No, it doesn't change my perception one bit.
Players don't want to know what they're taking. They want to go play. We all agree on that. And they don't think in terms of long-term care. They think in terms of short-term, can I get back in the game? Can I have this great career? I think this lawsuit is a little harder to prove than one where there's brain damage and suicides and there are graphs all about it. But I don't think the league ever wants to see a parade of former players who are now infirm and handicapped, physically handicapped, get up and testify about anything. That's why I'm saying again, it's in the best interest of everybody to settle this. Right. And if some people say, as the writer of the story says, that maybe it's a money grab, well, you know what? There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money to go around, and the league should probably try to settle, don't you think?
Tony, I agree with your diagnosis of this originally. You don't want to have the discovery process here. You don't want to parade players and former physicians and even current physicians. If you're the NFL, you can't want that. Yes, I agree completely with you. Some fascinating turn in the Stanley Cup playoffs last night where the Rangers lost Game 5 in a controversy involving, of all people, their star goaltender, Henrik Lundqvist. Alain Vigneault pulled Lundqvist midway through the second period after he uncharacteristically allowed 4 goals. Problem was, the Rangers tied the game anyway, and Vigneault was faced with the dilemma of whether to put Lundqvist back in. He did not, and the Rangers lost the game ultimately 7-4. But, Tone, should Vigneault have put Lundqvist back in there?
Yeah, this isn't soccer, and it isn't baseball, and you can put the guy back in the game, and he's your horse. Once it gets to be tied, and I know he's having an off night and people have off nights, but the backup goalie then coughed up the lead within a minute of the game being tied. I think you go with your horse. You try to end a playoff series when you can. I don't think this has any effect on the future of the series, but in this particular game, even with a towel around his neck, I think you put him back in.
Tony, the one thing maybe we have in common physically with great athletes, world-class athletes, is muscles still get sore. People still cool off. I mean, talking about body temperature. And you can't go back out there. And just in talking to a couple of former professional athletes today, they were like, you know what? I don't think that's possible. Once you are out of a game like that, you have worked up that kind of sweat. You are both physically unable and mentally checked out. And as cool as it sounds to just say, go back out there, we got a chance now, Tony, I don't think it's possible you could put him back out there and have any kind of good result.
Just for the record, against the Flyers in the first round of the playoffs this year, gave up 4, got pulled in Game 6, came back in Game 7 in New York and won 2-1.
One of the great performances you can
imagine. So I would say get him back
game.
in as soon as you can. The famed rapper 50 Cent attempted to throw out the first pitch at his hometown Mets game last night. Wearing a Mets jersey with his given name, Jackson, as in Curtis Jackson, Mr. Cent threw a horrible pitch, a laughable pitch, a catastrophic pitch. Wilbon, there is a notion out there that this joke of a pitch will help Mr. Cent's new album out next week. Do you concur?
Fitty, not getting it done.
Not getting it.
So, you know, one of my positions on this is a kid who grew up playing baseball and throwing a baseball every day, it seemed, from 4 to 18. Okay, so I can say this. We, as in black people, don't play that much baseball anymore. There's no evidence that Mr. Fitty had thrown a ball much, if at all, in his life.
Really?
Right now, the state of baseball and black folks in America, we got more people swimming than playing baseball. We got more people playing lacrosse than playing baseball.
Like
so
Willie
baseball is a foreign entity, Tone, to people like Fitty.
Okay, let me just explain something.
Curtis.
That pitch was awful. And by the way, if this helps him sell albums, then Carl Lewis ought to go back in the studio right now and try to cash in on his ridiculous thing. This is top 5 terrible, and here is the top 5. Mayor of Cincinnati, right? Awful, absolutely awful. Carl Lewis, aforementioned, awful.
Carl Lewis.
Carly Rae Jepsen, awful. The Hero Cat, awful.
I don't know who that
and
is.
Fitty, awful.
The Hero Cat. I'm not sure who that is.
That cat who chased the dog. He threw out a pitch.
Yeah. But Fitty, this can only hurt your... I wasn't going to say this could hurt your street cred, but the crew that he's marketing to, they don't play baseball either. They don't pay attention to it other than to put the jersey on, maybe a throwback. So that's it.
By the way, untucked, I might add. Yeah. Let's take a break. Coming up, Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy join us to discuss the mental toughness or lack thereof of the Indiana Pacers.
And later, so much for that third-round showdown between Venus and Serena. It's not going to happen.
They can still have it, just not have it in France.
Not in Paris.
That's
it's
right.
not.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal.
The shot scores! The USA leads by 2!
Every save.
Here's Germany up. Steal. Close. In the box. The shot is stopped.
Every match. Wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
After 3 seasons apart, Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy have been reunited. We welcome back one of America's favorite sports couples from the site of tonight's Heat Pacers Game 5 in Indianapolis. Let's start with this. What is the blueprint for a Pacers win tonight? Because honestly, for some of us, it's very hard to see.
Well, the blueprint is still the blueprint. The bottom line is they've got to do it. They've got to defend at a high level. They've got to take care of the basketball. And then, to me, their stars got to show up. Paul George has got to play the way we've become accustomed to seeing him play. But it certainly starts on the defensive end.
Yeah, and I think they have to focus on the right things. I was never more disappointed in their team than after their Game 4 comments. I thought they were totally misplaced, and to me, their focus wasn't what it needs to be on what they can do better. I'm interested to see if they have the belief that they can still win the series and come out and play a good home game.
Jeff, I'm glad you talked about that. It leads me to this question. So much as we walk around Indianapolis, and you guys have done this, so much is being put on Frank Vogel, as if it's mostly or entirely Vogel's fault. From what you guys said, so you think that this is going to be it for Frank here in Indianapolis if they don't win this series? Because I get that sense, even though it seems unfair to me.
Listen, I think after this season, Larry Bird's going to extend his contract and give him a raise, because what I've seen is he's the glue to a mentally weak bunch. And, for instance, Roy Hibbert, I was fortunate enough, as you know, Michael, to coach Ewing and Yao Ming and Mutombo, and I never once, after they played a poor game, was on the end of the blame for their poor performance. They always looked inward. And to see Roy Hibbert blame Frank Vogel for his lack of production in Game 4, I'd rather him just say thank you. Thank you, Frank, for making me an all-star by designing a scheme defensively that has allowed me to get much, much better. Instead, we saw this weak-minded response, and I was really disappointed.
Well, I'll say he's an outstanding coach and has done an outstanding job, and there should be no concerns. I'm truthfully tired of the bottom line is you look at this Pacer team that has had an outstanding season. If you lose to the Miami Heat with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and crew, and Eric Spoelstra in the Eastern Conference Finals, that means firing?
I agree. We're in this blame the coach culture right now. If little Johnny doesn't play enough on his 7th grade team, he's blamed. If he doesn't get a college scholarship, the coach is blamed. And it goes on. And I think it's time for somebody in some organization to stand firm behind their coach, even when they're going through periods of up and down.
Why didn't he say that before I got let go?
No, I was, believe me.
I'm just joking. I'm only serious.
No, I'm saying well, that's a whole nother PTI segment.
All right, I'm going to blame a player here. Wilbon and I go back and forth on this all the time. Wilbon says that Paul George is a star. Mark, I heard you say earlier that Paul George is a star. I don't see it. I don't think he's particularly dependable. I mean, I don't think he's had great series, but where do you guys both come down on Paul George? Feel free to tell me I'm crazy.
Well, to me, I think there's a difference between a superstar and a star. I think he's certainly a star player on the rise. The season that he had, the momentum that he gained coming into this season, he hasn't disappointed. Hasn't played his best basketball at the biggest moment, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that he's a star basketball player, but he's got to certainly have big moments, and he hasn't had one yet.
Well, I think he's a top 20 player in the league. I think he's a very good two-way player. But listen, he's going against the very best in LeBron James, and there's no shame to being outplayed by the very best in the game. To me, the shame of it all was him blaming the officials after Game 4. If you lay it all on the line, which Paul George does regularly, and you've elevated this Indiana Pacer team like he has, you take the bad moments with the great moments, and you do it with dignity and class.
I want to look for a second across at the other series, guys, to what's going on with OKC and the Spurs. And from what you've seen so far, and I know that series isn't decided, obviously, presuming the Heat win in the East, which team in the West do you think would be the tougher matchup for Miami?
Well, that's a great question. And I believe if I was a member of the Miami Heat, as crazy as it sounds, I would prefer to face Oklahoma City with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, 2 of the top 7 players in the world. I think that San Antonio with the ball movement, the defense, the success last year, it's a dangerous basketball team. I don't know who's going to win the West, but I would much rather face, if I was Miami, because styles makes fights, and I would much rather face Oklahoma City and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Mark in that when you have James and Wade, you can match up well with their 2 best players, Durant and Westbrook. And so I see that as a better matchup than I do San Antonio. I think either team out of the Western Conference will be the favorite, but they're going to have to play well because Miami's cruising right now. They're about to get some more rest, and James and Wade, when they're playing like this, it's hard to beat them.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to see you reunited. Though one of you or both of you is going to coach soon, we're taking a break. When we come back, a look back at the good old-fashioned flop-off.
Plus, long odds for your Cowboys, Tony, and a must-win for my Blackhawks tonight.
How did they become my Cowboys? You're always telling me I'm a Redskins fan.
You're NFC East.
Happy time, people. Happy 45th birthday, Rob Ford. Maybe we shouldn't be celebrating the birthday of a foreign mayor who happens to be in rehab, but Rob Ford is a beast. Sports connection is obvious, that NFL tie he wears, his Toronto Argonauts jersey, his Toronto Raptors jersey. Here he is playing football. Boom goes the dynamite. Wilbon, 45, sneaky young. You get a second career in politics, huh, after rehab.
Looks like he's 20 years old. He's your kind of mayor, though, Tone. Cut from the same cloth as your boy Marion Barry.
Absolutely, the night owl. Not so happy anniversary to LeBron James and David West. On this day last year, the 2 participated in one of the worst double flops in NBA history. LeBron's flop is ludicrous. West appears to be half-hearted, a semi-counter flop. Both players fined $5,000 for making a mockery out of the foul rules.
Maybe they just were off balance. Why do we have to presume the worst all the time?
That's why they were fined. Happy trails to the Williams sisters. Both are out at the French Open. Venus goes out in the second round all the time these days. But Serena was the #1 seed, and she won only 4 games against someone named Garbine Muguruza, who grew up on clay in Barcelona. Wilbon, American tennis is dead.
Well, Tony, the Williams sisters have been American tennis and been holding it up for like a decade now. We're going to have to develop somebody else. They're going to get older at some point and not be able to do this.
Who?
Over.
Time to find out we messed up, reality.
Also, happy trails to the #6 for Titans backup quarterback Charlie Whitehurst. He lost an arm wrestling match to punter Brett Kern and lost the number along with it.
He lost to the punter?
Allegedly. Or it could be a hoax. We'll see. Or it looks like you guys want an update to the Sterling story. Ramona Shelburne reporting that Shelley Sterling, who has authority to sell from her husband, has issued deadlines to have a deal done by Monday and then firm offers. Deadlines for that, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, so get in on that, Tom.
If I'm the NBA and I can get rid of him, let him sell it, get rid of him. Big finish. Ben Revere hit his first home run in his 1,566th plate appearance. Reason to be proud or embarrassed?
Proud. He has one. Most people don't have one. Even a lot of baseball players professionally. Shane Battier tells Grambling he turned down an offer to run for the Senate in Michigan. Smart decision.
Yeah, he's a little young for that now. Someday down the road, a little young now. Sean Lee's injury dropped the Cowboys' Vegas odds of winning the Super Bowl to 50-1. Is that fair?
It's silly. It's too low. It should be like 1,000-1, which would be more accurate. The U.S. beat Azerbaijan 2-0 on 2 goals in the second half. Subs. Cause for concern?
Bring back Landon Donovan. Last one, Kings Blackhawks Game 5. Is tonight the end for the champs?
Tom, we're 11-0 in games 5, 6, and 7 over the last 2 postseasons. I want that to be 12-0 tonight.
Ooh. We are out of time. We will try and do better the next time, and I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. Check out the PTI podcast on iTunes.
Dan Hornaday, keep your head up. We're with you. Shout out.